Congratulations, you've just woken up in Westeros. The good news? You're alive. The bad news? So are the rats, the sellswords, and the silent gods watching from the trees. You're not Jon Snow. There's no sword waiting at your bedside, no direwolf curled at your feet. You're not Khal Drogo, rising from silk sheets and scented oil, with a kingdom waiting at your feet. You're not Daenerys Targaryen, dreaming of fire and thrones and bloodlines older than time. You are you, and you're cold, and you're late, and something is definitely crawling under your shirt. But don't worry, you'll get the full Westeros experience tonight, because in this story, you don't stay one person. Over the next couple hours, you'll drift through lives like the many-faced god himself. You'll wake up in the filth of Flea Bottom, taste salt on the air in Pike, freeze beside the fire at Castle Black, and bleed out beside kings in the Riverlands. You'll be a servant, a soldier, a queen, a monster, and a myth, and every time you'll try to survive. Spoiler, you won't. But that's okay, because this is a sleep movie, a slow burn, night-long descent into a world where death is common, and comfort is fiction. There are no jump scares here, just the quiet horror of life without toothpaste, plumbing, or central heating. If that sounds like the right lullaby for your tired, overstimulated brain, I suggest you subscribe now, before you fall asleep, but only if you actually like what we're doing here. For all you sleepless, curious, slightly masochistic souls who want to drift off while walking through hell in fur boots, welcome, now, back to the dream, or the nightmare. You wake up in Westeros. That part's important. Not just anywhere. Not a fantasy world. Not a dream. Westeros. The land of queens, bastards, dragons, and 1,000 broken oaths. Only you weren't born in a castle, or a keep, or even a proper village. You were born 3 piss puddles away from Flea Bottom's main alley, in a room too small to bury a body in, though someone probably tried. They might have succeeded. You haven't looked under the floorboards. Some things are better left unexplored. There's no window, just a crack in the wood through which the city breathes. Smoke, piss, boiled cabbage, and once in a while, wildfire, real wildfire. There's still some of it in the stones. Some mornings, like today, you hear horns in the distance. A procession moves toward the Red Keep. A boy shouts, "The hand rides! The hand rides!" But you don't see him. You're too low. In status, in geography, in possibility. From where you lie, all you get is the muddy thunder of hooves. Maybe it's Queen Margaery passing by, draped in silks and smiles. Maybe it's Tommen, still too young to know how doomed he is. Maybe it's no one. Processions mean nothing here, unless you're crushed under their wheels. You stare at your ceiling, smoke-blackened, sagging, decorated with one lone chicken feather. You don't own a chicken. You're not sure if that's poetic or just sad. Your bed isn't a bed. It's a mat of straw, rags, sweat, pressed so thin that your spine now curves like the Iron Throne. You wonder if a rat crawled across your chest last night, or if that was just a dream. Either way, it left a souvenir. You shift, and something hard jabs your hip. You reach into the hay and pull out a coin. Not just any coin. Lannister gold. You bite it. It's real. It's warm. Someone must have dropped it. Not you. You've never had that kind of luck. You don't know whether to feel blessed or marked for death. In King's Landing, gold glows like blood. You hide it quickly, not in your pocket. Someone would cut it off. You hide it under your tongue. From above, you hear groaning wood and muffled moans. Your neighbor rents to traveling performers. You envy them. At least they get applause. You sit up slowly. Your knees crack. You blink into the dim light. Dust hangs like judgment in the air. You look out the slit in your wall. You can just barely see the banners flying. Lannister red, Baratheon black, maybe even the silver of House Targaryen returned from ashes. You don't care who wins. You never did. No matter whose sigil flies, you still sleep on straw. You still live in a city that forgets your name every morning. This is your castle. This is your keep. And today, like every day, you'll walk out of it and try to stay alive. But before you leave, you should wash. Or try, because in Westeros, hygiene is a form of luxury, and you are many things. But luxurious isn't one of them. You stink, but not the way Sandor Clegane stinks. After cleaving 5 men in half. That's the stink of violence, glory, steel and horse sweat. Your stink is older, less noble, less earned. It's the stink of rot, of wet straw and bacterial ancestry. The scent of someone no bard will ever write about. You try to clean yourself. You really do. There's a bowl in the corner. It used to be water. Now it's soup. A mosquito floats on the surface, legs splayed like a fallen knight. You salute him, a fallen comrade. You dip your hands, rub your face. It smears. You rub harder. Bad choice. The smell intensifies. Somewhere far above you, on the Dragonstone cliffs, Daenerys Targaryen bathes in scented oils. Her servants whisper in Valyrian. Her soap is carved with her family sigil. Yours? An old turnip you found in a bucket last week. It no longer smells like food. You scrub your armpits with your fingers. They protest. You persist. The grime doesn't move. You consider using sand. Again. You hear about Queen Margaery's rosewater baths. How she soaks for hours, skin kissed by petals. You once tried petals. Found some wilted ones in the gutter. Rubbed them on your neck. Got a rash for 3 days. No one told you they were from a funeral wreath. You squat outside over your personal throne. A wooden plank split in the middle, hanging above what you hope is a pit. The hole shifts in the wind. Something growls down there. You don't ask what. In Westeros, curiosity isn't brave. It's fatal. Tyrion Lannister, you heard once, had a chamber pot carved from obsidian. Or maybe that was just a joke. Doesn't matter. Even his jokes shit better than you do. You finish quickly, wipe with leaves, not soft ones. Back inside, you find a rag. It smells like pickled feet. You use it anyway. You scrub your neck, behind your ears, your belly. The lice fall like snow. You watch them scatter. You name the biggest one Rhaegar. He seems noble, for a parasite. You once saw Brienne of Tarth emerge from a river, armor shining, face grim, sword in hand. You tried bathing in that same river the next day, caught a fever that made you speak gibberish for a week. No sword, no armor, just gibberish. You look at your nails, black crescents. You chew them clean, spit the taste, salt, iron, and desperation. Somewhere in a tower above you, a nobleman is being shaved by candlelight. Somewhere in the north, Jon Snow washes the blood from his hands in silence, preparing for battle. And you rinse your feet in piss-warm runoff from a butcher's barrel. That's what hygiene looks like when your name doesn't matter. But you're clean now, sort of, and the day hasn't even started. You're hungry, but not the kind of hungry you read about in stories. Not poetic hunger. Not dramatic battlefield hunger. Not Arya Stark on the run. Not even Gendry in the rowboat hunger. This is quieter, duller, the kind that creeps in and settles like mold behind your ribs, convincing you that food is a myth you half remember from dreams. You reach for the chunk of bread you left on the shelf last night. If it can still be called bread. It's more like a hardened fossil. It has edges now. Bread should not have edges. You gnaw at it like a rat trying to reclaim its dignity. You fail. It tastes like dust and shoes, and yet you're lucky. Yesterday's stew, if you can call it that, gave you cramps so sharp you thought the stranger had finally arrived to collect. He hadn't. Just spoiled carrots and a generous scoop of mystery. Your water is in a bucket, a lidless bucket, a democratic bucket, open to all who wish to contribute. Bugs, spit, occasional roof drips. You strain it through cloth. The cloth used to be part of your shirt. Now it's part of your survival. Somewhere far from here, at High Garden, they eat pigeon pies laced with lemon, with crusts so delicate they shatter like promises. You once tasted lemon, a real one. A traveling merchant let you lick one for a copper. It burned. You cried. Then you gave him the copper, and cried again. In the Red Keep, the royal kitchens work day and night, stuffing suckling pigs with apples and hope. The small folk say Circe used to eat breakfast wine, not drink it, eat it, with fruit soaked in brandy and a side of contempt. That you could respect. You choose slower now, because what you have is all you'll get until sundown. And even then, only maybe. No markets today. A riot yesterday shattered the stalls. Someone said a Targaryen cousin was caught hoarding grain. Or was it a Tyrell? Doesn't matter. Either way, people died, and you weren't one of them. Which is, in Westeros, basically a feast. You remember once, only once, tasting meat that wasn't grey. It came from a feast honouring some knight who lost his head the next day. You stole a strip of roasted boar, ran 4 blocks with a guard behind you, ate it behind a piss barrel. Best meal of your life. Now, you eat crumbs and pretend. You imagine Sansa Stark, eyes closed, sampling honeyed duck breast with a look of practiced delight. The nobles don't eat food. They're fed narratives, symbols, heritage. Every dish is a lesson, every garnish a signal. You eat to not collapse. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve, not out of manners, but because your lips are cracked and the bread left them bleeding. No salt, no spice, just chewing. In this world, hunger isn't pain. Hunger is peace. It's when you're not hungry that you start getting noticed. And in Westeros, being noticed is often fatal. You finish your breakfast with ceremony. You stare at the final crumb, press it between your fingers, and lick the dust from your thumb. It tastes like yesterday, which is better than nothing. The air outside is growing louder. Time to dress, if you can call it dressing. You get dressed. That sounds like too grand a word for what you're about to do. Dress implies choice, fabric, maybe even dignity. You have none of those. You pull your tunic over your head, if it can still be called a tunic. It's a sack with holes, more brown than it used to be, though whether that's from time or contents, you're not sure. It's damp. Everything you own is damp, even your bones. Somewhere far from here, Cersei Lannister's maids are lacing her into a gown, so delicate it costs more than your entire street. Silk dyed with crushed beetles from Essos, gold thread, sleeves that drag on the floor and never touch the dirt. She wears politics. You wear mildew. You find your boots. Technically, one is a boot. The other is a wrapping of leather tied with string. They don't match. That's a luxury you abandoned last winter. You once had 2 socks. Now you have one. And a memory. The smell. Well, in medieval times and in Westeros, people didn't wash their clothes often. Not because they were lazy, but because washing meant soaking fabric in lye, ash, or urine. Yes, urine, human urine. It breaks down grease and fabric, so you can choose stink or dissolve your last tunic. You chose stink. You've heard tales that Lady Olenna used to change her gown 3 times a day, not out of vanity, but to make political statements. Fabric as language. You once wrapped yourself in a curtain to impress a tavern girl. She laughed. You wore it anyway. You tie a belt made from rope, not to hold your pants up. You don't have any. But to keep your guts from spilling out if you get stabbed. Practical fashion. A noble might wear furs from the east, or silks traded through bravos. You wear the skin of a sheep that probably died of fright. You didn't tan it. You just found it. It stiffens more each day. You call it your formal layer. In the north, they say Jon Snow wears black, but that his cloak is soft, heavy, dyed in ink and sadness. Yours is burlap. It itches, but it hides the sores on your arms. And in Flea Bottom, hiding things is often the only safety you get. Interesting fact. In real medieval towns, sumptuary laws dictated who could wear what, by class. You could be fined, or beaten, for wearing cloth above your station. In King's Landing, this is even more dangerous. If you're seen wearing silk you didn't earn, you might not live to explain it. You might just disappear into the river. So you dress poorly, intentionally. Not because you're modest, because you're smart. And yet, you wonder what it feels like, truly feels like, to step into clothes that are warm, clean, that smell of cedar and not fear. To wear something made for you, not found beside someone else's corpse. But this is not that kind of morning. You're dressed, if we're being generous. Time to step outside and face the work. You work, of course you do. You're no lord, no maester, no sworn sword. You don't get to sit in council chambers and argue about ravens. You don't get to lean on a pommel and call it honor. You wake, you dress, you toil, you bleed. Today, like most days, you're carrying barrels, heavy, splintering, reeking of vinegar, piss, or worse. No one tells you what's inside. No one cares. You move them from wagon to tavern, from tavern to alley, from alley to dock, over and over. There is no job. There is just demand. If you're lucky, you get a copper. If you're not, you get kicked. Sometimes both. You once worked 2 days straight for a blacksmith who never paid you. You went back to complain. He broke 3 of your ribs with a hammer, and you apologized. Somewhere not far from here, Gendry is swinging a forge hammer under proper shelter. Federal, trained, protected. A bastard, yes, but a useful one. His arms are thick with purpose. Yours are thin with survival. You once lifted a sword, not to fight, but to sell for food. It was too heavy anyway. You see the gold cloaks leaning on their spears at the market gates. They call it work. You call it theatre. You've seen them more often drunk than alert. Seen them take bribes and lives with the same blank face. Brienne of Tarth works too, but hers is the work of Wooths. The grind of steel, of sparring at dawn, of proving herself again and again to men too small to see her. Her labour is noble. Yours is sweat, splinters, and aching knees. Real fact, in medieval towns, the average day labourer worked from sunrise to sunset. 1 meal, often no shoes. By age 40, most were already broken, backs bent, teeth gone, hands gnarled like tree roots. Not from battle, from barrels, bricks, beasts. Your hands shake now, not from cold, from overuse. The fingers don't quite close anymore. You wrap them in cloth and keep going. You once cleaned chamber pots for a week in the sept of Baelor. A holy duty, they called it. You saw nobles kiss relics while you mopped up their leavings. One man dropped a coin in the bucket, said it was charity. You used it to buy onions. A knight once told you that hard work builds character. Then he rode off without paying you for unloading his horse. His squire spat in your direction. You considered stabbing him, then remembered. You can't afford a knife. You pass a boy sweeping ash off a butcher's steps. His arms are thinner than yours. He smiles. You don't know why. He'll learn. Somewhere far to the east, Daenerys Targaryen is leading armies. freeing slaves, declaring destinies. She calls it liberation. But for every chain she breaks, someone still has to sweep the ashes. And here you are, sweeping, carrying, bleeding, always. You lean against a wall, breathe in. Your back screams. Your knees whisper betrayal. Your fingers won't unclench. And it's not even midday. Time to face the weather. The wind cuts today, not in a poetic, gentle, melancholy way. No, it cuts like steel, thin, invisible, endlessly patient. You pull your ragged cloak tighter, but it's like trying to hold back the tide with a sieve. This is Westeros, after all, a place where seasons don't follow calendars. They follow legends. And when winter comes, it doesn't ask, it takes. The dirt beneath your feet has turned to something between stone and slime. You can't walk without slipping, but you can't stand still without freezing. Your boots, mismatched and still damp from 2 days ago, offer less protection than good intentions. One has a hole, the other just gave up. Your fingertips have gone numb. That's good. They stopped bleeding yesterday from the rope burns. And if you're lucky, they'll stop feeling altogether before infection sets in. Somewhere beyond the city, in the icy winds north of the wall, men like Jon Snow endure worse. They sleep in snowdrifts, eat frozen meat, fight things that don't bleed, but they have fires, cloaks, brothers. You have your breath, and even that escapes too quickly to warm you. Interesting fact, in real medieval winters, it wasn't snow that killed the poor. It was dampness, wet feet, wet clothes, wet straw, a slow rot that started in the boots and ended in the lungs. They called it winter's kiss. It was not romantic. It was pneumonia, and it was everywhere. You cough once. It sounds deep, like something's growing. You ignore it. You remember last summer, a dry, sour season when the wells ran bitter and rats grew bold. You thought the heat was bad. Then autumn came, and with it, the rains, and rot, and fever. Then this. A merchant yesterday said the maesters in Old Town are predicting a hard winter. You laughed. You're already in it. The maesters can argue over wind patterns, in towers with glass candles and warm porridge. You live in the puddle beneath them. You once saw Stannis Baratheon's men marching in the snow, faces black with frostbite, fingers falling like dry fruit. They walked like statues with bones of ice. You thought, what fools. And now, today, you'd trade lives with any of them. They died for a cause. You're just dying slowly. You pass a bakery. There's warmth behind the shutters. You can smell it. Bread, roasted chestnuts, heat thick like memory. A noblewoman walks out with gloves stitched in silver thread. Her cheeks are rosy. She giggles at the wind. You bite your tongue so you won't scream. And then, sometimes, you hear whispers about Daenerys Targaryen, walking through fire without burning, surrounded by ash and sun in cities that drip with sweat. You imagine what it's like to sweat again, to feel the sun not as a curse, but as a luxury. But today isn't fire. Today is ice, and Westeros is a cruel god that remembers your name only when it wants to watch you suffer. The sky darkens, though it's only midday. Your hands shake, not from fear, from cold. You clench them into fists and keep walking, because there's no shelter, no warmth, no pause. And the cold, like everything else in this land, doesn't care if you've earned it or not. But if the weather doesn't kill you, something else might. Which brings us to medicine. Your tooth aches, not sharp pain. No, it's deep, ancient, as if your jaw is trying to remember every bad thing you've ever eaten, said, or dreamed. You press your tongue against it. There's blood, always blood. You consider seeing someone, but who? There are healers in Flea Bottom, sure. Women with no names, men who boil rats for poultices. One charges half a copper to whisper to your forehead and wave smoke in your face. Another offers leeches, always leeches, as if draining you will somehow fill you back up. You decline. You've been drained enough this month. In Old Town, the maesters study anatomy by dissecting criminals. They wear chains of knowledge, drink wine laced with crushed pearl, argue about fevers with words you'll never hear. Somewhere there, a maester could probably save you for the right house, the right price, the right cause. But you have nothing worth saving. You rub your chest. There's a wheeze in your breath now. It's new. You wonder if it's a friend. You name it: Jorah, noble, doomed, persistent. Real fact. In the Middle Ages, most physicians believed the body was ruled by 4 humours: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Illness came when those humours fell out of balance. So they bled you, purged you, starved you, boiled you. The point wasn't to heal. The point was to restore order. In King's Landing, order is a myth. You once watched a boy die from a splinter. His hand turned black. His arm swelled. He screamed for 3 days. On the 4th, silence. They burned the mattress, blamed the wind. You feel a similar ache in your own palm now. It itches. You pretend it's healing. You remember when Robert Baratheon was gored by a boar. They said it was the wine. They said it was fate. But you remember the stories about the maester at his bedside, how he worked slowly, how he seemed too calm. You wonder if that's the secret. If you're rich enough, even your killers wear robes and whisper in Latin. You once passed Melisandre in a crowd, or someone who looked like her. Red cloak, dead eyes, scent of smoke and secrets. She touched a man's face and told him he was chosen. He died 3 days later. Everyone said it was a miracle. You check your own skin for signs: spots, swells, heat, cold. Nothing yet. Your grandmother used to say sickness was punishment, a ghost pulling at your lungs, because you wronged someone in your sleep. She said onions cured anything if you left one under the bed and whispered your sins to it. You tried once. The rat ate it. You got worse. You walk past a stall where a man is selling dragon's blood. It's beet juice and lies. But the bottle looks warm, and for a moment you imagine it working. Your veins clearing, your breath returning. But you keep walking, because you can't afford magic, and healing, real healing, is reserved for the named characters. Arya survived stab wounds that would have split you in half. Bran fell from a tower and woke up a prophet. The Hound came back from death because, well, why not? You sneeze. Hard. Wet. Your ribs rattle. A new pain joins the choir. You call it fate. You are not alone in this world, but you are never truly with anyone either. Everywhere you go, you're surrounded by footsteps, by voices, by stares, and still you remain alone, like a cracked stone in the middle of a crowded street. That's the first rule of social life in Westeros. You are useful or you are invisible, sometimes both. You walk past neighbors you've known since childhood. You nod. They don't nod back. Maybe they've forgotten you. Or maybe they remember too well. That time you stole bread. That time you screamed during the purge. That time you didn't help when the girl was dragged away. Social memory runs deep in the mud. Up the hill, in candlelit halls, Sansa Stark hosts a feast. She smiles like frost. Every word she speaks is coated in etiquette and quiet defiance. Her hair is a statement, her silence a weapon, her marriage a tactic. You know this. Everyone knows. Gossip in King's Landing travels faster than plague and lasts longer. You once fell in love. A weaver's daughter. You touched her hand once. She flinched. Not because she didn't want you, but because her father was watching. The next day, she was gone, married off to a tanner with 4 goats and no teeth. Love here is a contract, measured in acres, coin, and proximity to a good name. Real fact, in the real Middle Ages, marriages weren't about affection. They were property negotiations, sealed before puberty. Peasants needed alliances. Nobles needed heirs. Women, mostly, had no say. In Westeros, it's worse, because here, you can lose your name and your life if you resist. You see a wedding procession passing through the square. A girl no older than 13, painted with rouge and panic. The groom rides a white horse and smiles like a man who knows he bought the best sheep in the market. You look away. And then there are the gods. 7 of them, if you follow the faith. 1, if you follow the red god. None, if you're smart. But superstition clings like lichen here. You still toss salt over your shoulder. You still avoid stepping on broken stones. Not because you believe, but because you can't afford to be wrong. You once saw a sparrow preacher ranting in the square, said the nobility were corrupt, said the gods would cleanse the city with fire. You clapped. Someone saw you. You were dragged into a shed that night and taught a lesson you still feel in your spine. Now, you just bow your head like everyone else. You heard Varys has no friends, only little birds. You envy him. You have neither. Sometimes you go to the tavern, not to drink, you can't afford it, just to hear music. Once, a bard played a song that made you cry. Someone mocked you for it. The next week, the bard was found face down in the river. No one sings that song anymore. Festivals come and go. Most of them excuses to burn something, hang someone, or crown another doomed child king. You pretend to cheer. You eat the burned crust of the festival bread. You watch fireworks launched for people whose faces you'll never see. And when you return to your corner of the world, the same neighbor still won't look at you. Because in Westeros, the worst thing you can be is forgettable. You pray to be remembered, even if only for a day. But tomorrow, no one will mention your name, because you don't have one. You don't get to decide who you are in Westeros. You are assigned, labeled, measured, branded, by your birth, your clothes, your genitals, your name. If you even have one. And then you're locked inside that skin until it rots. You remember, once, asking your mother if you could become a knight. She laughed, not cruelly, just tiredly. She said knighthood was for boys, noble boys, boys whose fathers had land and the right color blood. You had none of that, so you carried buckets instead of blades. If you were born a girl, the path was even narrower. You bled, you served, you married. And if you resisted, you became a problem. And problems in Westeros get solved with marriage, exile, or knives. You once worked beside a woman named Lisa. She dressed like a man to haul bricks, stronger than half the dockhands. She vanished after someone told the overseer she'd been unnatural. You never saw her again. The bricks never asked what gender lifted them. Brienne of Tarth became a knight, eventually. But she had to bleed for it, break for it, be humiliated for it in every hall she entered. They laughed at her, spit at her, called her things you've heard whispered in the alley. She kept going. You didn't. You couldn't. Real fact. In the Middle Ages, gender wasn't just biology. It was law. Sumptuary codes dictated what you wore. Church laws dictated how you prayed. Men who acted like women were imprisoned. Women who acted like men were burned. And those who didn't fit either were never written about. History has no room for people it doesn't understand. In Westeros, it's worse. Here, the rules are ancient and enforced with steel. You once saw a man whipped in the square for wearing lace. They said he insulted the gods. He didn't scream. You wondered if that was his rebellion. Sometimes, late at night, you wonder what it would feel like to be someone else. Not just richer, not just cleaner, but different. To be seen, not just stared at. To speak and be heard, not echoed. Arya Stark chose not to be a lady. She trained, fled, killed. Her body didn't define her. Her blade did. But she had names behind her. You don't even have letters. Loras Tyrell lived in shadows, draped in roses and rumors. They said he burned for beauty, not battle. They loved him for his smile, until the faith put him in chains. In the end, his charm wasn't armor. It was proof. You think of Missandei, who learned a dozen tongues just to survive. Her words moved armies, but in the end, they still took her head and called it justice. And you, what are you? You are what the street believes. You are what the guards don't question. You are what the butcher sees when you beg for scraps. You wear your gender like a borrowed cloak, ill-fitting. It chafes, but it hides you. And in this world, hiding may be the only form of survival left. Tomorrow, you'll wake up again, in this same skin, with these same rules, and you will obey them, because disobedience gets noticed. And in Westeros, being noticed can get you killed. You hear screaming in the street. Again. That makes 3 times this week. You don't run toward it. You don't look out the window. You keep your head down. Pretend to be busy. That's what survival looks like in Westeros. Not strength, not speed, but practiced invisibility. Because here, violence is constant. And the law is a coin in someone else's purse. There is no due process, no fair trial, no kindly judge in a powdered wig. There is steel, fire, rumor, and whichever comes first, that's how your story ends. Real fact. In the medieval world, justice was public spectacle, trial by combat, drowning tests for witches, executions by fire, rope, or worse. The punishment wasn't meant to fit the crime. It was meant to teach the crowd a lesson. Westeros is no different. You once saw a man lose his hand for stealing an apple. You remember that. Not because he screamed. He didn't. But because his son watched, still chewing. You once saw a woman stoned for adultery. No one knew who she'd slept with. Didn't matter. She bled on the cobblestones, while men shouted about honor, with mouths full of spit and wine. You didn't join in, but you didn't stop them either. In the north, they say, he who passes the sentence should swing the sword. Sounds noble until you realize most men here are happy to do both, and more. You once brushed a gold cloak in a crowd. Just an accident. He beat you with the shaft of his spear, laughed while doing it. You apologized, then thanked him for not arresting you. He didn't even remember your face. You think of Jon Snow, executing traitors in the snow with silence and sorrow. His blade is clean, his conscience heavy. At least he has one. You think of Oberyn Martell, face crushed into memory while the crowd gasped like it was theatre. You think of Ramsay, of the Mountain, of Cersei, lighting half the city in wildfire and calling it strategy. Their violence is remembered, named, feared. Yours, absorbed by the mud. You don't own a weapon, not because you're peaceful, because they're expensive. Steel costs coin you don't have. You keep a nail in your boot, just in case. You once saw it work. Once. You know every alley, every staircase, every tavern to avoid. You know which bakeries are brothels, which brothels are butcher shops, which places are neither, but just as dangerous. When violence comes, it doesn't come with music. No duel, no drama. Just a shove, a knife in the dark, a trip down the wrong stair. Then silence. Then someone else moves into your cot. Your death will be quick, unwitnessed, undocumented, and the next morning, nothing will change. That's what justice looks like when you have no name. So you walk carefully, speak softly, and watch the rooftops just in case. Because in Westeros, the law doesn't protect you, it watches you and waits. Night falls like a closing door, not sudden, not gentle, just inevitable. The sun disappears behind the crumbling towers of King's Landing, leaving the air wet and heavy like a blanket soaked in regret. The alleys fill with shadows, the rats grow bolder, and the city begins its second life, the one it hides from daylight. You return to your shelter. Home feels too generous a word. The door creaks like a bad omen. You close it anyway, even though you know it won't keep anything out that really wants in. Your hands shake as you undo the rope around your waist. Not from fear, from fatigue. A quiet, sullen kind of tired that doesn't beg for rest, it begs for surrender. You eat what's left, a piece of bread turned to stone. You chew slowly, not to savor it, just because your teeth can't go any faster. You lie back on the straw. It crackles. Something small scurries out from beneath you. You pretend it's a mouse. You pretend a lot of things now. Somewhere far away. Daenerys Targaryen stares into fire and sees visions of tomorrow. She sleeps beneath dragonbone and prophecy. Jon Snow sharpens his blade, unsure whether dawn brings death or duty. He sleeps in silence, wrapped in wool and consequence. Sansa retires to her chamber, her gown unlaced by candlelight, her dreams folded away with the rest of her armor. Bran closes his eyes and becomes someone else, or everyone else. And you stare at the ceiling. There's a leak again, a steady drip into a wooden bowl. You listen to it, almost musical. You try to find rhythm in it, pattern, meaning. You fail. You cough again. The wheeze is still there. You name it, Jorah the Persistent, and smile in the dark. Real fact. In the Middle Ages, people didn't sleep straight through the night. They slept in 2 parts, with a waking hour in between. They prayed, made love, or stared into the dark, afraid. They called it the watch. You do the same, but no prayer comes, and no one is watching. You shift. The ache in your back has moved. That's probably bad. You wonder if this is the night you don't wake up. You wouldn't fight it. Not really. Not anymore. They say death in Westeros comes in many forms. Steel, fire, poison, childbirth, rats, ravens, or just forgetting to wake up. You'd prefer that last one. Quiet, blank. You pull your cloak tighter. Not for warmth. That's long gone. But to keep something close. Anything. And just before sleep begins to blur your vision, you think about the lives you walked through today. A stable boy, a washerwoman, a servant, a sick man, a whisperer, a shadow. No names, no pages in the book. But you were here. You mattered, if only to this moment, to this story, to this quiet voice, whispering you down into sleep. You made it to nightfall. Most don't. Sleep now, before something wakes you. And now, as the world fades to black, you may wonder, was it all just a story? You didn't ride a dragon. You didn't wield a Valyrian blade. You didn't break chains or raise banners. You woke. You worked. You suffered. You survived. And maybe that's what most lives in Westeros are. Not legends, not songs, but labor. Soft hands don't last long there. Kind eyes don't last long either. You walked through it tonight. The cold, the hunger, the wounds, the silence. You wore the clothes that scraped your skin, ate the bread that cracked your teeth, slept beneath a roof held up more by habit than by wood. But if you look closely, our world is not so different. We no longer bleed people to balance their humors, but we still confuse exhaustion for virtue. We no longer burn witches in the square, but we still destroy what we don't understand. We don't die from spoiled stew, but we die from neglect, from noise, from 1,000 invisible cuts. We still survive by learning when to speak and when to disappear. Westeros is a dream, yes, but it's a mirror too, a cold, cracked mirror held up to our quietest thoughts. What we fear, what we resent, what we endure, and who we have to become just to get through the day. And so maybe tonight you didn't just fall asleep. Maybe you remembered something ancient, buried, quiet. The part of you that still knows what it means to live without comfort, to be forgotten, to love the small warmth of surviving just one more day. That part of you is still here, still breathing, still listening. You've made it to the end of the day in Westeros. You have nothing left. And for once, that is enough. The world goes quiet now. Let it. No more footsteps, no more horns, no more names. Just the darkness, just your breath, just sleep. Fade to black, fade to nothing, fade to peace. Good night. You were not meant to remember this part. Before kings, before quests, before songs were sung in stone halls, there was only silence. A silence older than the world, heavier than mountains, so deep it hummed. You don't have a name yet, no lineage, no purpose. You are not Frodo, nor Gandalf, nor even one of the forgotten men who died in the first wars. You are something simpler, a breath, a flicker, a watcher before the tale begins. And the world you watch is young, but already old in spirit. You see stars, not just in the sky, but sewn into the earth. The elves call them memories. The dwarves call them treasure. The men call them unreachable. You watch as the Valar shape ardor, hills rising like ribs, seas like breath. They argue in music, build with dreams. One among them, Melkor, wants more. More heat, more shape, more control. He whispers dissonance into the song. And the world flinches. You don't understand their words, but you understand the feeling that even in paradise, some hearts hunger for ruin. Real fact, Tolkien built Middle-earth as a mythology for a world that had forgotten its own. His languages came first, Elvish, Dwarvish, not as tools, but as roots. History was shaped backward, like memory. In the beginning, he wrote the end. And still, the world begins. You watch forests stretch like arms, rivers carve new names into the land. The elves awaken near a starlit lake. The dwarves chisel their kingdoms under mountains they've never seen in daylight. Men come later, always later. And from the start, there is fear of the dark, of each other, of a power that moves behind the sky. You hear of a place called Valinor, a land where light is pure and sorrow has not yet been invented. But you are not allowed in. You live in the shadowed world, in Middle-earth. You feel the first fire made by mortal hands, smell the first bread baked by trembling fingers. You see love born without language, war begun without malice, stories spoken not in words, but in gesture, in song, in burial. This is not your time, but it is your beginning. The story you know, of rings, of power, of death and hope, has not begun. But the land remembers, and tonight, as you close your eyes and let the world fold over you like an old blanket, you step into that memory. Before hobbits, before heroes, before endings. There was you, sleeping inside the breath of a world just learning to speak. Your sleep deepens, but the world doesn't rest. Not here, not in Middle-earth. There is a whisper in the wind tonight, a name, too old to be spoken aloud. Sauron. Not yet a burning eye, not yet a black tower on the horizon, but already a shadow stretching across the mountains. You do not know him, but you feel him, like a storm behind the clouds, a silence before the scream. In the east, beyond the river, Anduin, his servants stir. Spiders grow fat in forgotten woods. Orcs sharpen their blades and forget their names. Men speak in tongues not heard since the first age, and in the West, a different kind of silence. Not peace, but denial. Minas Tirith polishes its white stones. Gondor's watchfires burn low. Elves sing songs about things that never truly ended. Real fact. In ancient cultures, evil wasn't always a figure. Sometimes it was a force, a corruption, a wrongness in the air. Sauron was once beautiful, a servant of order. He loved structure, craft, obedience. He still does. Only now his order smells like rot, tastes like iron, marches on 10,000 legs. You dream of a land you've never seen. Mordor, mountains that bleed smoke, ash instead of soil, light that has forgotten how to warm. But even Mordor sleeps, for now. In the Shire, children chase fireflies. Farmers toast at the Green Dragon Inn. Pipe smoke curls like lazy thoughts. And no one speaks of evil. But that does not make it distant. Sauron is not a man. He does not breathe or bleed. He waits and grows. He sends out whispers to kings, to crows, to those who feel small and wish to feel large. You once heard a man say, "True power doesn't shout. It listens." And somewhere in the dark, Sauron listens. He hears the ring. He remembers the forge. He counts the names of those who once betrayed him. And he waits for you. Not because you are important, not yet, but because you are in the world. And in Sauron's world, everything, eventually, is his. You don't find the ring. The ring finds you. Not with noise or fire, but with silence, that ancient kind, the kind that echoes louder than sound. It comes to you the way shadows stretch, slowly, invisibly, until you're already in it. Gollum had it first, if first even means anything here. He held it so long, his name dissolved. Not Smeagol, not friend, not man, just hunger. But the ring is restless. When it tires of one soul, it whispers to the next. And it whispered to Bilbo, a hobbit, small feet, big heart. No throne to win, no army to lead, just stories to finish and pantries to raid. And yet, it touched him. It didn't scream, didn't burn his skin. It just waited. Real fact. In Tolkien's mythology, the ring corrupts by amplifying desire. Not by cursing, but by offering. It tempts. It gives you a reason to justify anything. And the most dangerous temptations are the ones that sound like kindness. Bilbo survived because he left it. Barely. But the story doesn't end with survival. It passes on to Frodo. A quiet hand offered it. Another quiet hand received it. No lightning. No declaration. Just the tiniest shift in the world's weight, from one back to another. You know that feeling. That moment you accept something you didn't ask for, but can't refuse. Responsibility. Pain. Burden. Some people get crowns. Others get ring bearers. Frodo doesn't boast. He doesn't plan. He doesn't even understand what he's holding. He just knows someone has to carry it. And he says yes. That's how all great stories begin. Not with prophecy. Not with battle. With a whisper. And a choice. One foot forward. Then another. And already, there's no turning back. The road doesn't ask you if you're ready. It just appears, a trail of mud and moss, through hills that don't have names, and woods that whisper your secrets back to you. You leave home with bread, a dull knife, and the kind of fear that doesn't scream. It hums, low in your bones. The Shire fades faster than you thought. Not because it's far, but because comfort has no memory once you step into danger. Frodo walks because he must. Sam walks because he loves. And you walk because something inside you says don't stop. You pass a scarecrow twisted in the wind. A black shadow crosses the sun. You don't look up. Real fact. In medieval Europe, travel meant danger. Roads weren't patrolled. Maps were vague. And most people never left the village where they were born. To travel meant you were either running from something or toward something worse. The hobbits meet a man named Strider. He's taller than safety, quieter than trust, but his eyes know something your heart forgot. How to survive. You sleep under stars. Not the pretty kind, the kind that watch you and don't blink. You hear wolves. You hear yourself. You wonder which is scarier. There's a moment in the marshes where something moves just beneath the surface. A ripple, a whisper. Sam grips your arm. No one speaks. Later, at Weathertop, firelight dances on stone. You sing to distract the night. It doesn't work. The Nazgul come like smoke with swords. Frodo falls. And you see the wound, small, but already writing his name in pain. He survives. Because help comes, a woman on a white horse who rides like wind made flesh. Arwen. She outruns death itself. Brings Frodo to Rivendell, where elves speak in moonlight and time forgets its rules. You breathe. Finally. But the road, it's only just begun. You hear them before you see them. The gallop of hooves on packed dirt, the sudden hush of birdsong, the way the wind recoils as if it knows what's coming. Then, black shapes on the horizon, tall, hooded, silent. They do not speak. They do not breathe. They only follow. You grip the reins tighter. Your pony senses it too. The wrongness in the air. The Shire is behind you now. Ahead, a world unraveling. You find shelter under trees that whisper secrets. Eat bread that crumbles like old parchment. Drink water that tastes of ash and memory. Sleep comes, but peace does not. Because the ring is heavier now. Not in weight, but in presence. It hums at your chest, a pulse not your own. It watches the horizon. It waits for the riders. Real fact, in many ancient cultures, rings were believed to carry more than metal. They held oaths, spirits, curses. To wear one was to bind yourself and be bound in turn. In Middle-earth, the ring is a mirror, and the Black Riders, the Nazgul, are what you see when you stare too long. 9 kings once, now wraiths. Their crowns lost, their names unspoken. They obey only the eye, the dark will, the power that stretches from Barad-dûr across every trembling leaf. You hide from them, but you feel them, like cold in your lungs, like a name you almost remember. Frodo does not understand yet that they aren't hunting him. They're hunting the absence of Sauron's will, and that absence glows like a wound. You reach a ferry, leap aboard. Water, you've heard, can stop them, but not forever, because they are persistence made flesh, loss made visible, a future with no voice, only command. You stare into the fog beyond the river and wonder, are they the enemy? Or are they what happens when men want power more than they want peace? The ring answers. It burns in your pocket, and the riders wait. The mountains open like a sigh, and somewhere between thunder and mist you hear music. Not the kind sung by men, not tavern songs or battlefield chants. This music drifts. It doesn't play, it breathes. You follow it. Your boots bleed against the stone. Your pack is soaked. Your breath wheezes through cracked lips. But you keep walking. Because somewhere out there, they say, is sanctuary. Not victory. Not even comfort. Just one night without fear. Rivendell. The last homely house east of the sea. When you arrive, your name doesn't matter. Your clothes are ragged. Your story, strange. And yet, they do not laugh. They do not ask. They do not turn you away. You are given soup, a soft bed, clean water, a night sky full of stars that don't feel like knives. You are not healed, but you are held. Real fact, in many ancient traditions, especially among Celtic and Norse cultures, the concept of a hall or hearth as sacred space was common, a place of music, memory, and welcome. These places weren't merely shelters. They were pauses, moments when the world outside could not follow you in. Rivendell is Tolkien's version of that. A sanctum, a spell, and perhaps that's why it never truly feels real. The elves here are quiet, too quiet. Their eyes hold centuries, and yet they look at you as if you're already fading. You eat beside them, in silence. You sleep near them, in peace. And yet, you know this can't last. Even the trees seem to hum with departure. Elrond speaks of duty. Gandalf speaks of war. Aragorn, he just stares into the fire, like it knows more than he does. You're not part of their songs. You're not written in any prophecy, but they let you sit by the fire. And for one night, that is enough. Outside, the river sings. You listen, and fall asleep to the sound of something ancient that has not yet decided whether to love you or leave you behind. You descend, not metaphorically, not yet. Feet strike stone, torchlight flickers against cold, wet walls. This is Moria, the dwarf city carved into the bones of the mountain, once full of laughter, hammer song, and firelight, now silent. You breathe shallowly. The air is thick with dust and old fear. There's a scent here you can't place, like burnt parchment soaked in water. Death, maybe, or memory. The sound of your footsteps disappears, as if the rock itself eats it. You are small here, smaller than ever. Once this place was called Khazad-dûm, and once it was beautiful. Now its beauty hides behind bones. Real fact, Moria was inspired by real cave systems in ancient cities that fell to ruin. Petra, Babylon, the catacombs of Rome. Tolkien, a World War I veteran, understood what it meant to walk through places where death lingers in the walls. Moria is not just a ruin, it's a memory of ambition turned to ash. You press forward. You see words etched into doors long locked. A tomb bearing a name, Balin. A friend, someone says. A lord. He lies beneath stone now, his kingdom quiet. You hear the drum, doom, doom, doom. The shadows shift, something wakes. You don't scream, there's no point. The cave shakes. A creature stirs, not a beast of flesh, but of flame and punishment. Its wings block the sky. Its whip cracks like thunder. The Balrog, ancient, elemental, older than your fear. Gandalf stands before it, not because he must, but because someone must. You run, because you can, because it's the only thing you're good at. Stone collapses. Light disappears. The wizard falls. His voice echoes into nothing. Fly, you fools. And you do, because there's nothing else left. Your breath tastes like guilt. Your hands shake like you dropped something. Something that can't be picked up again. You emerge, not from the mine, from innocence. The world is colder now, and the path only gets darker. Sleep if you must. But don't forget the echo. Doom, doom, doom. You enter darkness by choice. The doors are sealed behind you, and the air tastes like old iron. Not rust, older. More ancient than decay. More still than death. There's no moonlight here, no bird call, only the sound of breath and stone and memory. Moria. Once the heart of dwarven glory. Jewels, axes. A kingdom carved in the bones of the earth. And now, a tomb. You walk beneath pillars older than the trees of your homeland. They rise into shadow, too high to see, too vast to comprehend. Dwarves built with arrogance and grief, both leave marks that last. Your footsteps echo, and echo, and echo. Somewhere deep in these halls, a drumbeat begins, not from hands, not from joy, but from something waking up that never should have. You try not to think about what's down here, what they dug too deep. Real fact, in medieval Europe, mines were often considered cursed. Accidents weren't seen as mishaps. They were omens, spirits, punishments for human greed. Miners crossed themselves before going under. Some left offerings, others never returned. In Moria, there are no saints. You pass the tomb of Balin, a stone coffin, a name, a silence heavy with guilt. He came here to reclaim something. What he found instead was prophecy fulfilled, that every kingdom built on pride must eventually drown in its own echo. You pause. The others speak in whispers now. Gimli mourns. Frodo senses something near. Gandalf reads aloud the final lines of a dying man's journal. They are coming. And then you hear it too. The drums, the screech of iron, the cry of something not dead but not living either. You run, you fight, you try to hold the line. But deep beneath it all, deeper than orcs, deeper than bones, something stirs that should have remained buried. The Balrog. Shadow made flesh, fire made will, a demon of forgotten days. You don't defeat it, you escape it, barely. But Gandalf stays behind. He faces the flame. He falls. The silence afterward is the heaviest yet. You exit the mines into the blinding light. You breathe again. But something inside you remains in Moria, buried beside the dwarves, beside the wizard, beside the part of you that still believed the old stories always ended in light. You walk on, but you walk different now. Edoras, a city of horses and wind, of long plains and longer memories. A place where loyalty is a fire and treason, a whisper that can kill. You arrive not as a guest, but as a shadow, a friend to the outcast, an ally to the truth. And truth here, it's unwelcome. Theoden, king of Rohan, sits slouched on his throne. But it's not age that bends his back, it's the weight of something darker. Wormtongue speaks softly in his ear, too softly, too often, and the king listens, because it's easier, because resistance takes strength, and strength has been drained from these halls, one whisper at a time. You pass through corridors lined with tapestries, heroes of old stitched in golden thread. But those threads don't speak now. They just watch, frayed, silent. You meet Éowyn. Her eyes are sharp, too sharp for a court that prefers its women quiet and its warriors dead. She hides her fire behind courtesy, her fear behind silence. She grips the hilt of a sword she is not allowed to wield. Real fact, in medieval Europe, women in noble courts were often used as political symbols, betrothed to secure alliances, displayed like banners at tournaments. But some, like Joan of Arc or the Countess Matilda, broke the script. Éowyn would too. In the Golden Hall, Gandalf raises his staff, not in violence, but in defiance. Light cracks through the shadows, and the king remembers who he is. For a moment, hope returns. Not because of magic, but because someone finally said, enough. Treason isn't always a sword drawn at the king's back. Sometimes it's letting the rot spread. And loyalty? Sometimes it looks like rebellion. You breathe in the wind of the plains. It smells cleaner now, but the storm hasn't passed. It's only just begun. Fade gently into the wind, into the silence that follows the first cry of a free man. You dreamed of mentors once, someone to guide you, to teach you, to place a steady hand on your shoulder and whisper the right words at the right time. But in Middle-earth, power changes everyone, even your teachers. You remember the first time you heard of Saruman. His name carried weight, an Istari, wise and ancient, sent by the Valar themselves. He wore white, the color of clarity. He built towers, spoke to kings, studied stars. They said he was the head of the council, the voice of reason. You believed it. But the higher someone climbs, the more they crave the sky. In the deep halls of Isengard, Saruman turned, from knowledge to control, from curiosity to command. His white robes, now bleached arrogance. You think of Gandalf, his once equal, now cast into darkness. locked upon a tower top like a discarded relic. But even there, Gandalf found the wind, the moth, the eagles, the reminder that humility is not weakness. It's the secret strength of the truly wise. Real fact, Tolkien modeled the Astari on angelic beings sent into the world in old age, forbidden to dominate. But even divine intentions bend beneath pride. Saruman wanted order. He saw the chaos of men, dwarves, elves, and thought, I can fix this. But to fix the world without its consent is to break it. He bred orcs in pits, spoiled the woods with smoke, made deals with the eye, all for what he called a better age. You've met people like him. Their voices calm, their ideas clean. Their plans sound like mercy, until you realize the mercy is for them and the sacrifice is yours. Saruman's fall wasn't sudden. It was a slow erosion of trust, of care, of seeing people as ends, not means. And when he looked in the mirror of the future, all he saw was a throne. You wonder if that's the real test, not whether you resist darkness, but whether you still see others once you've learned the light. And in the end, it wasn't a hero who broke Saruman. It was a tree. The Ents, old and slow and stubborn, marched to war, not because of glory, but because their forest wept. You hear the sound of roots cracking stone, of water flooding fire, of nature remembering its anger. Isengard fell. Saruman watched from his window, powerless, pointless, a lesson in hubris carved into every brick. And Gandalf, once the grey, returned as something more. Not cleaner, not colder, but earned. You dream of mentors still, but now you dream of the ones who step aside, who listen more than speak, who remind you that wisdom isn't found in towers. It's found in the small choice, the long walk, the refusal to give up. The real white wizard, after all, was never the one in charge. It was the one who came back and kept walking beside you. It begins with silence, not the peaceful kind, not wind through leaves or rain on roof silence, but the kind that feels like pressure in the skull, like something once alive is holding its breath. You've followed Aragorn this far, trusted him. But now he walks toward a place with no return tickets, and you follow. Because in Middle-earth, obedience isn't always about orders. Sometimes it's about hope, even when the hope is buried under mountains. You enter the tunnel. The air turns cold. Not the usual chill of high places, but an ancestral cold. A cold that remembers betrayal. Real fact. In ancient burial traditions, many cultures believed spirits of the dead lingered near the body unless given proper rites. The paths of the dead offer no rites, only memory. You remember the story. Men who broke their oath to Isildur. Men cursed to wait in shadow, unchanging, unliving. Their only sin, cowardice. You wonder what that says about Middle-earth, that the worst crime is not fighting, that the highest redemption is war, a flicker ahead, a green mist. You grip your blade, not because it will help, but because empty hands feel worse. They appear, not walking, not gliding, just being. Forms made of mist and regret, eyes like polished bone. Aragorn doesn't flinch. He speaks, not in command, but in reminder. You will fulfill your oath. The air shifts, as if the mountain itself heard. This is not just bravery, it's inheritance. The weight of an old bloodline calling debts due. You stand there, not noble, not chosen, just present. That's the strange part. They don't attack you, because you don't matter. And in this moment, that's a blessing. You walk deeper, they follow, and you realize this is what it means to be a king. To carry fear without shedding it. To walk where death waits and speak as if it listens. Later, on the ships, when they rise like a storm against Sauron's forces, you will see what true redemption looks like. It glows green, It screams like wind through ruins. It dies fulfilled. But for now, it is enough just to survive the path. You emerge. The light is real again. You didn't scream. You didn't run. You walked with the dead. And they walked with you. Night doesn't fall. It crashes. And in Gondor, it crashes louder than anywhere else. You hear the drums before you see them. Distant, guttural, too steady to be thunder. Then flickers of flame beyond the hills. Then the sky. It is not a sky anymore. It is a lid, a vast black bowl lowered over the city to snuff it out. And still, life goes on beneath it. You wake in the sixth tier, dust on your face, a shiver in your breath. There's a smell in the air that doesn't belong to morning, iron and oil and something fungal. Siege rot, they call it. In the streets, men sharpen blades that will snap. Women carry water to walls they'll never climb. Children sleep to the sound of hammering. Denethor eats in silence. He does everything in silence now. You catch glimpses of soldiers who arrived in the night, cloaks from Dol Amroth, dark hands from Far Harad. The city has gathered what it can, but it is not enough. You are not a warrior. You are not even a runner, but you stay, because there is nowhere else to go. Real fact. In medieval sieges, death didn't come from arrows. It came from disease. Rats spread faster than swords. Food spoiled, water poisoned, morale rotted. And when walls fell, the killing was artistic. In Minas Tirith, the killing hasn't started, not yet. But it's waiting. You hear Gandalf's voice before you see him, calling men to courage, calling death a shadow. You believe him for a second. Then the catapults begin. Stone slams stone. Fire meets wood. The gates groan like they know they'll fail. You stand on a wall for the first time in your life. It's not bravery, it's inevitability. Below, the enemy swells like a tide. Trolls in armor, orcs with eyes like burned coal, and in their center, a being too large for names. You watch as Rohan does not come. You listen as Denethor whispers of flames. You pray without knowing to whom. And then, a horn. Distant. Real. Hope is a strange shape. It doesn't look like victory. It looks like delay. The battle will last all night. You know that already. But if you see morning, if you survive this, it will not be because you were strong. It will be because you were lucky. And maybe that's enough. The sky over Rohan bruises black. Horns are being carved. Armor polished with ash and hope. Every stable in Edora stands empty, because every horse is being ridden to war. You are among them, not a rider, not a king, but close enough to feel the ground shiver, close enough to smell the iron on the breath of warriors who know they may not return. Theoden, the king of Rohan, does not speak like a ruler tonight. He speaks like a man who has already written his own death into the wind. His eyes are not afraid, they are resolved. Real fact. In early medieval warfare, kings often rode into battle beside their men. There was no safe command tent behind the lines, no radios. Your courage had to carry over the clang of steel. And when the horn blew, it was not ceremony, it was survival. In Middle-earth, Rohan is a fragment of that real history. Horse lords modelled loosely on Anglo-Saxon and Norse warrior cultures. No siege engineers, no great towers, just riders, just oaths. You watch as they assemble. The old men who lied about their age to ride one last time. The young boys who don't even own a beard, but dream of dying with one. And in the middle, Eowyn. She hides her face, but not her fear. She will not be left behind. You remember the lines she whispered. I fear neither death nor pain. And then, after a pause, I fear a cage. You understand her. You once felt caged too. By your name, your blood, your birth. And when the horns blow, those deep, aching blasts that make the hills tremble, you feel something in your chest give way. The Rohirrim ride like thunder unshackled, down the slope, toward the gates of a burning city. You do not know who will live. You do not know if it will matter. But for one brief moment, Middle-earth breathes through hooves and song, and so do you. Your breath is shallow now. You don't remember the last time you slept. You don't remember the last time your pack felt light, or the last time the ring didn't whisper. The climb toward Mount Doom has no end, only incline. Black stone, sharp wind, the stench of ash and memory. The air itself seems to reject you. Sam walks beside you. He's not a hero, just a gardener, but he holds you up when your knees fail, carries you when your feet quit, reminds you again and again that there is still a world worth saving and food worth remembering. Your mouth is too dry for taste, but in his voice you hear strawberries and spring and home. Real fact. At high altitudes, the human brain begins to starve from lack of oxygen. Memory distorts, logic dissolves. You hallucinate. You grow cold inside. In Tolkien's world, Mordor isn't just a place. It's a physiological truth, a test of endurance beyond the heroic. The ring isn't just heavy, it hijacks your biology, and now it weighs more than your bones. Every step is betrayal. You want to stop, but you can't, because to stop is to give in. To give in is to fail, and to fail is to make all of this, all the deaths, all the sacrifice, pointless. So you press forward. The ring burns your skin now. It fuses with your neck, with your spine, with your will. You no longer carry it. It carries you. The eye watches, not from a tower, from inside your skull. Its gaze lives beneath your eyelids now. Even if you were blind, you'd still feel it. You collapse. The ash sticks to your lips. Sam grabs you, lifts you again, and for one brief moment, you almost believe that love alone could finish the task. But love is not enough. Not here. Your body is failing. Your mind is gone. You fall. And the world does not catch you. Because in this moment, at the edge of all things, you must choose. Die as yourself, or live as something else. Sam calls your name. It sounds like a story ending, and you are too tired to answer. Some places aren't meant to be seen, not by the living. And yet, here you are. The black gate looms like a wound in the world. Stone teeth, iron breath. Every part of it screams, go back. But there's no back anymore. There's only forward, into dust, into shadow, into Mordor. You and Sam wear cloaks like second skin now. Rough, stained, smelling of ash and fear. You walk during the grey hours. Rest when the eye is busiest. Speak only in whispers, if at all. Even your thoughts have grown quieter. Sam hums sometimes. Software old songs about gardens, about home. You don't hum. Not anymore. You remember the taste of clean water. But barely. You still carry lembas. Crumbling now. Less food, more memory. Sometimes you both pretend you're just lost travelers. That there is no ring. No mountain. No doom waiting with open arms. But the weight reminds you. Every step, every breath. The ring has grown heavier, as if it senses how close it is to home. Gollum returns, often now, talking to shadows, arguing with his reflection. You almost miss the days he was just a guide. Now, he's a warning. There are watchers in Mordor, eyes with no faces, winds that carry whispers, and shadows that move without source. You once saw a corpse blink. You walked faster. Real fact. In Tolkien's drafts, Mordor was modelled after the industrial destruction he witnessed during World War I. Charred landscapes, poisoned air, mechanized death. It wasn't fantasy. It was memory. And Mordor remembers everything. You sleep now in fits. Dreams full of fire and screams you don't recognize. One night, Sam takes your hand. Just for a moment. No words. Just warmth. And somehow, that single touch feels more real than the ground beneath your feet. Because in this land of death, that's all life becomes. A flicker of kindness in a sea of ash. You wake the next morning. The mountain is closer, and so is the end. It begins not with fire, but with silence. The eye sees everything except the end. Mount Doom rumbles like a god trying to breathe. The sky splits. The ground stirs with old hatred. And at the heart of it, two hobbits climb through death. Frodo is a ghost of himself now, eyes sunken, limbs trembling. He doesn't carry the ring anymore. The ring carries him. And Sam still climbs. He doesn't care about prophecies or bloodlines. He doesn't believe he's special. He just knows his friend needs him. And that's enough. Real fact. In medieval war, sieges could last months. Cities were starved into submission. Walls were breached with flame and crude machines. But sometimes, the greatest victories came from within. Just like here. Inside the mountain, Frodo stands at the edge, his task nearly done, and he fails. Because that's what the ring does. It waits. It whispers. It makes you believe you've earned it. But Gollum still follows, still hungers. He bites. He screams. He falls. The ring, ancient, sentient, full of spite, burns away in lava older than language. And just like that, the spell breaks. Barad-dûr cracks. The eye panics. The world shifts. Dark towers collapse like dying animals. Orcs scatter like roaches in light. The black gate groans open, not from surrender, but from the sudden absence of command. There's no triumph, no roar of victory, just the strange quiet that follows when evil loses its voice. You don't see it happen. Not really. Not with mortal eyes. But you feel it, like the loosening of a chain you never realized you were wearing. Back in Gondor, soldiers drop their weapons. Men fall to their knees. The sun returns like it was always meant to. And in a volcano, two hobbits lie broken on a rock surrounded by fire. Not heroes, not legends, just survivors. And that, in this world or any, is more than enough. The crown does not sit lightly. Not in Gondor. Not in the story. And yet, today, it rests on Aragorn's head. Not as a prize, but as a weight, a memory. You see him walk the ruined halls of Minas Tirith, every footstep echoing against stone once bathed in fire. He does not speak of glory. He tends the wounded. He bows to the fallen. He kneels before the hobbits, not as ruler, but as a man who knows what it cost. Real fact. In many medieval societies, kings were believed to rule by divine right, chosen not by people, but by the gods. Their touch could supposedly heal diseases. Their word could shape law. But the real power, often fragile, dependent on war, alliances, bloodlines, and belief. Aragorn had all of those, but none of them defined him. He took the long road home, through haunted lands, through forests that whispered in Elvish, through the screams of dying kings and broken brothers. And now he stands here, alive, changed, but still bearing the name he once hid, Elisar, the Elfstone, the healer. You wonder what it feels like, to be seen, not as a threat, not as a servant, but as something more, to be named, called forward, crowned by history. The banners fly again, not just of Gondor, but of Rohan and the North and the free peoples. They gather not in submission, but in renewal. It's not a victory parade. It's a ritual of remembering. You think of Theoden's empty saddle, Boromir's silence, the burned fields around Osgiliath. You think of Frodo, not here, of Sam, still holding too much, and of yourself, a small part of something vast, a quiet witness to the moment the war ended, and something older began. Minstrels will sing of this day, poets will shape it, children will reenact it in meadows and courtyards. But you were here. You saw the crown descend, and you knew this was not the end, just peace, finally allowed to begin. You wake slowly. The war is over, but it still echoes. Not in the air, in you. Your limbs feel like wood. Your breath tastes of ash. But the sky is whole again, not red, not grey, just sky. Minas Tirith stands tall behind you. Battered, yes. Scarred, but standing. And ahead, the fields are quiet. No banners, no fire, just grass. You don't know what to do with the silence, so you sit with it and listen. You hear carts creaking, children laughing, birdsong. It feels wrong, like joy on stolen time, like spring arriving in a graveyard. But this is the shape of peace. It doesn't ask permission, it just comes. Real fact, in post-war societies, from ancient Rome to post-Napoleonic France, peace didn't bring ease. It brought confusion. Soldiers returned home to fields they no longer owned, cities they didn't recognize, families who had learned to live without them. The war had ended, but the world kept changing. You walk the alleys of the White City. They look cleaner, wider, as if scrubbed of something. You don't see the blood anymore, but you remember where it fell. You pass by a fountain, once cracked, now repaired. You lean in. Your reflection stares back. Older, thinner, still you. Aragorn wears a crown now. He walks with a different kind of weight, one you wouldn't wish on anyone. He is not the man who fought beside you. He is a symbol now, a myth wearing skin. And Frodo? He smiles. But it's a quiet smile. Too quiet. The Shire is calling him back. But some part of him never left the mountain. Some pain stays packed in the corners of his eyes. Some wounds never close, even when the world says they should. Gondor sings again. Elves leave again. Hobbits drink again. And you? What about you? You are not a hero. You weren't named, but you helped carry the world when it asked too much. You survived the Age of the Ring, and now you exhale. The first breath of a new age. They say the third age has ended, and maybe it has. But for you, it was a single moment, a flicker of story where you were real. Let that be enough. Rest now. Middle-earth is not ending. It is simply turning the page. Sleep, with clean hands and lighter dreams. You were here. Fade to black.